first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
And would you be able to tell us a little bit, well, first of all, introduce yourself and tell us what you do for a living?
Okay, so my name is Theo. I'm 26. I work in Dallara since 1.5 years, so based in Italy, still not speaking Italian. And basically, me, I'm from a motorsport family, which was helping. Like my father was test driver for Michelin to develop racing tires for, he did F1, he did Porsche Cup, he did a lot of this kind of stuff. So I'm born close to tracks. I started to drive very early, and at the beginning I just wanted to drive. So I started at 13, 14 years old to drive on track with mainly GT cars. I did like the training Michelin is doing for their drivers, so mainly low grip for car control with big GT cars, so with Porsche, with this kind of car. Then I started also to do like Formula Renault, this kind of small single seaters to have this. And at the end, at 18 years old, I decided to do engineering training to please my parents, let's say. So I did my engineering school, and in parallel of my engineering school, I was racing. So I raced in, for example, Caterham French Cup. I raced a lot of different stuff. I was doing the engineering school. I did some internships in different places, small racing team in France. Then I went to Toyota LMP1 in Cologne, which was like a still worker internship to discover the company. So I was not working as an engineer, but still nice to see how works this kind of top level class category. I even went on track for some tests with the LMP1, so it was quite nice. Then I raced myself in a French prototype championship, which with a car that we developed with the school, basically. So that was also quite nice. It was an engine bike. So it was like a 600 kilos car for 200 horsepower. It was like a Formula 4 car, basically. I did the full championship in my third year. Then fourth year, I did an internship in Audi factory in DTM. So with a team which is Phoenix Racing. So we did the DTM championship. I did, so I was performance engineer already, the same job I'm doing right now at Dallara. And I did 24 hours of Spa, for example, as data and performance engineer. Then end of my study, I raced with old Porsche Cup, Porsche Super Cup in French Championship, and I finished my studies also there. And after this last year, I did 1 year with Oreca, with a project for Michelin, based on tire modeling, basically. Still racing in Porsche Cup for this year. And then I did my end of studies final internship in Dallara as performance engineer. And I got hired there afterward, basically. And now it's 1 year since the end of my internship based in Dallara, so working as a performance engineer. And I'm quite lucky because I also drive a lot the driver in the loop simulator. So we have a simulator at Dallara, which is the same as Ferrari F1 until this year. Ferrari F1, they have a new this year, basically. So it's like F1 simulator, and I drive it a lot because on the project, I work on one project, which is one car. And so I'm not sure if I can say what it is, so I will not take any risk, but it's like, it will not race, but it's a prototype. So in terms of technology, it's really close as an LMP1 car. And I do a big part of the development in the simulator as a driver also. So that's basically what I do.
That's really cool. Also, you've named pretty much all of our favorite racing series. Yeah, obviously you've given us a really, really detailed background. But now can we ask, what does a performance engineer actually do? Like, what are your kind of day-to-day tasks? You've obviously talked about your personal experience being more in the simulator, but what would somebody else in your position do as well? Or, you know, what's your job?
To me, if you are like performance engineer, there are two kinds. There is one which is on track. And if you are on track side, it's one thing. And there is one which is on car design part. So for example, the car I'm working on now, so my job right now, the car is not existing. So the car will do the first drive next year. So far it's just a model in the simulator, and we are, let's say, building all of the components. So in this case, what you do is, for example, in my case, the car will not race, so you are much more free in terms of regulation. So at some point, you will have to take some decision on, for example, the layout of the suspension you will use. whether it will be a simple suspension system like a Porsche Cup with like any normal road car, or if you will have a much more complex like F1 system of suspension or LMP1. And for this, you will have to do some analysis on what are the, let's say, the advantages to go on this kind of suspension system, what are the inconvenients, in general, it's the price. And you will have to make all of the analysis, making some simulation, so building some simple model, more detailed model, depending on what you need, to take this kind of decision. For example, in our case, we had to decide whether we were going to use active aerodynamic, so like with DRS rear and front to play with the aero balance in different parts of the corner and so on. Is the same. You have to make some analysis to understand how much performance you can gain, how much drivability you can gain. Is it worth the amount of weight you will have to increase for the hydraulic system and so on? So that's this kind of analysis. What is really nice is that I work with all of the different areas of the car. So I will work with the supplier, for example. So I will work with Brembo, which are providing the system. It's quite close to F1 or LMP1 tires, brake system, so it's quite nice. I will work for Michelin, so same, they proposed us different tire fitment with different size, different compound, and we had to decide what we will use for the car, so a lot of simulation and so on to do. We work with PKM, which does the suspension for all of the LMP1 and LMP2. So basically, I'm not an expert on every area, but I will work with the engine guys, the aero guys, the brake guys, everyone. And I take all of the information with me. And I will be the guy that will say, okay, we have to push more into this direction, to push more, to put more the money there. If we want to achieve this kind of level of performance, we need this kind of aero level. Therefore, we need this kind of suspension system and so on. So that's my job today, basically.
Okay. Can you quantify how much having first-hand driving and racing experience helps you in your day-to-day job, both as maybe in a simulator and as a performance engineer?
Even if I was not driving the simulator, it's huge because you are doing a lot of things on simple model, for example, to decide which kind of tire you will use. And this kind of model, they will never account for real drivability. You can do some mathematical metrics to analyze some things, but still it's difficult. So for example, when Michelin will tell you, okay, you have two different kind of compound, one is super hard, it's difficult to warm the tire and to put it in the correct operational window. If you never drove a cold, slick tire, can be difficult to understand what's the meaning of this. And for example, if you don't have the warm blankets like in Formula One or this kind of stuff, or the oven to warm the tire, you can, with a real cold slick, you can have less grip than with a normal tire you have on your personal car on the wet, on the road. So it can be super strange for a driver. So if you put a driver that is a gentleman driver with no way to warm the tire, and if the tire is super warm, it can be even dangerous, even though if it's racing tire, it's so it's one example, but in general, it's quite important. Also because I had the chance to drive a lot of very different cars, from rally cars to prototype to single seater. So I can have some magnitude of order of feeling of aero change, stiffnesses, is the car able to take the curbs or not? For sure, it's very good. I think for me, I'm quite privileged for sure, but for everyone that wants to be an engineer, I think it's quite interesting, for example, to do a bit of karting. It can be rental karting, and to put like just the GoPro and to see, you will experience what's the difference between what you see from the screen and what you really experience, and you will see that it's completely different. And if you get your first experience as trackside engineer, you will quite imagine what the driver experience compared to what you will see you on the data. Also, now with the iPhone, you can have some apps that takes the GPS, and you have the speed profile, and you can see a bit what you do. And it's quite interesting to try to say the same. You drive, you have the application, and then you try to say, okay, if you have the gears, for example, in this corner, I use this gear, in this corner, I use fourth gear. And you will see that it's already not so easy to say, to be able after the drive to say, I keep the brake until this point. In this corner, I was using third gear or second gear. And just on a super basic kart, you can start to have this feeling of what is it to analyze what you do. And that's what you will ask to the drivers when you will be on track at the end. So all of the experience you can have, take it. And it's really helping for the engineering side for sure.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. I think there's a lot of people who, or at least myself, you know, I'd be really interested in doing something like you, but I have no experience of driving or racing or anything. So it's I think you made a really good point there with the potential of going karting, just to have a bit of an understanding.
Yeah, and even now, if you have like a small simulator at home, like with even a super cheap setup, nowadays it's quite common to find not so expensive ones. If you drive on any game like Assetto Corsa and so on, you have now some plugin to export the data on Motec. Motec, which is, for example, the software we use in the in the loop simulator at Dallara. So it's the same, it's completely free and it works the same way. So it's quite nice to have. And you can start to export some data and to build some what we call the workspace in the software. So for example, you will do one workspace which will be there to analyze the driver behavior. So you will put the channels like steering wheel angle, brake pressure, gear used for the corner, this kind of stuff. Then you can do some workspace to analyze the reliability of the engine. So you will check the oil pressure, the oil temp, and so on. So we can already prepare this kind of stuff, which can also work for you then as a portfolio when you will apply for some jobs, saying, okay, I don't have any experience on track because I study, I'm young, and so on, but that's what I do. And at least you use a tool, which is in this case like video game or simulation game, but I use it differently than the other, and it brings me some benefits. And what is really nice is that as it's models, it's not real car. In general, you have channels that it's also very difficult to have on real car because super expensive or not even allowed by the regulation. So you can really work and analyze something which will be difficult to have on the real car afterwards. So it's quite nice. The only thing that you have to pay attention to is that the models in general are quite simple. So you can have some things that you will see on the data that are going in the opposite direction as the physics or what the real car will do. So you not have to take what you see as granted, like the car will be like this, but it's just a matter of training how to analyze data. And also, as we said, for the driving, as you said, Elizabeth, you drive yourself, and once again, being able to try to analyze yourself without looking at the data. Then you look at the data and you see if you are able to say, okay, in which corner I do this, in which corner I do this, and so on. It's already a good tool.
Thank you. That was actually very useful. I think at least I will probably be taking that advice. Now, earlier you mentioned that you had a bit of experience in different racing series in terms of the work experience you've done. What's the kind of difference that you find in working for Dallara versus working for a specific team? Are you familiar with the differences, or do you not have much that you can say about it? Or I don't know. I'm hoping you have some input.
Yeah, if you drive, I mean, in motorsport there is factory racing, so the competition which is financed by the big company like the constructors and so on. So in general, you have a lot of money, and you have motorsport which is paid by the drivers basically or the sponsors, and it's really completely different world in terms of engineering. Because even if you do, for example, LMP2 is beautiful cars, super fast, especially the old regulation one, so 2020. But most of the case, the money comes from the driver, and therefore the engineers are freelance, so they are not even full-time based in the team. They are doing some other things. There are no development of the car. And at the end, in terms of engineering, it can be much more boring to do LMP2 than to do, for example, GTE in Le Mans, with factory program, with Corvette, with Porsche, and so on, where you will have driver in the loop program. You will have maybe 10 performance engineers to develop the performance everywhere. It's going to be much nicer. So on the different racing series, for example, when I was racing with the Porsche Super Cup, it was 996, so 20 years old Porsche Super Cup in France. I was basically, so it was the car of somebody I was working for, and I was doing engineer, driver, everything. And you have just one person that will do at the end. If you split with the role you have in F1 or LMP1, you will have one person which will do race engineer, perfo engineer, data engineer, basically. While the more you go in high level, the more you split, and you will have one guy that will do strategy, like in F1, one guy that will do more the setup, the performance, one that will do just the data analysis, data scientist, and so on, and you split much more. So it can be two different work, two different jobs at the end, because it's not require, it doesn't require the same skills. But to me, both are super important. And to me, there is absolutely not like F1 and LMP1 is much better and smaller is not. And even to start, I think smaller can be much nicer because you can have the experience of doing everything yourself. And what is interesting is that the final job on the trackside engineer is the same as F1. I mean, if you are a race engineer, even in Peugeot 208 Cup, which is really, really super slow, is the same because you will deal with the mechanics, you will have to prepare the setup sheet in time, you will have to tell the driver what he does, to do the strategy for the race. And it's the exact same job that we will face in F1 and in LMP1. So to have the chance to do it by yourself and having the vision of the complete picture on smaller category, to me, can only help for the bigger category afterward. So very different.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say last year especially, we started loving the smaller series as well. We were, of course, because of probably the bigger media coverage of F1 and WEC, we weren't as interested as we are now, but we had the luck to go to a Formula 4 weekend here at Monza, which is quite near to us, and it has really been a nice experience. So yeah, for sure, it would be cool to start out in a smaller series. Yeah. I was wondering, you said you worked obviously in a lot of different areas. You've been a driver first, you've been a student, now you're working in a company. What is your current work-life balance like? How do you spend your days, weeks, and?
So me, actually, I have one deadline, which is the first drive of the car, which is going to be end of March of next year, basically. So now it's bit less critical for me because all of the engineering is frozen. The monocoque is frozen, the suspension layout is frozen. So I had a lot of work a bit earlier when we had to finalize, for example, what are going to be the anti-roll bar stiffness we will build for the car, all of the adjustability range that you will build, that you will need to have on track. So now basically I have a lot of work on simulator session preparation. Because we have some components like differential which are active, and we need to pre-calibrate all of these components using the simulator. So we put the real component of the car in the simulator, and we do the calibration of it in the simulator. So basically, all of the beginning of the year is going to be like on track. Basically, you do preparation of the session, so it's like a run plan. What do we want to test? What are the steps we want to do on these components? The scan we want to try, and so on. Then you do the driving session. In this case, I drive most of the time. I'm not the only one. We have different drivers also, but most of the time it's me. And then you do the post-processing, so the analysis of the setup change, is going into the direction you expected or not, trying to understand why, if it's not the case. And that's it. You have you do loop differentiation. So that's going to be the plan. Then when the car will drive, today I still don't know if I will drive it or not. So I can't tell you because I don't know if I will be just performance engineer on the real car. If it's the case, I will go on track for the complete development as a performance engineer, basically. And if I drive, I will do a bit of both, basically. So that's the point. If you work as a racing team, you have your racing season, so you do all of the racing, and when you have a bit of free time, you do some development. So development means creating new tools, trying to understand new things, measuring the car on different bench that you will rent, going to a wind tunnel, for example, or a 7-pastric bench for the suspension. So that's development. And the rest of the time, your schedule is completely built by when the car has to race. It has to be ready. We need to prepare for the race and so on. While when you build a racing car from scratch, because when I arrived in Dallara for this project, I arrived at the very beginning of it, so it was nice to see the complete project. It's much more depending on when you need to freeze the components for the car assembly and to begin the car assembly. So depending on that, you will have some time. Then at some point, for some reason, you will need to decide, for example, for the tire fitment, because depending on the different sizes, they need to do a different design of the monocoque or of the bodywork, and it has to be done now. So at this date, you have to decide for the tire, so you have the time to make the analysis before. And depending on all of this kind of different scheduled dates, you work on very different topics, basically.
That sounds like a very busy schedule. Yeah. How do you, if I can ask you this, if it doesn't interfere with your privacy, how do you cope with all of this stuff together with your maybe private life? And do you still have time for yourself, for your hobbies?
Yeah, much more now than when I was student, because when I was student, I was racing. I also took the diploma to be a driver instructor, because in France you need the diploma, which is same as ski instructor, for example. So I did this engineering school and driving. Then you have to be fit, so you have to do a bit of sports. I was also like the main engineer for the racing car we build with the engine bike and so on. So there I would say that's my last 3 years of study. So already I don't party, I don't drink alcohol. And yeah, my last 3 years of study, I was working every day until midnight, 1 a.m. And the weekend also. I mean. But then I'm doing this, I managed to not go at school because I told my teacher, okay, I don't go at school, but that's what I do. And it was clear that it was working for my final work goal. So I managed to get a good notes in order to have the authorization not to go at school or to go just for the exam. And in parallel, I was able to rest because my last year I was racing in Germany on Nürburgring. So it was nice, but it was a lot of road to go from Nürburgring because my school was close to Le Mans. So I had to go to Nürburgring and I had to come back to Le Mans to do some exam. Then I had to come maybe in Manicourt in France or in Le Castellet in the completely south of France to drive. So there it was completely crazy and it was nice on some case, but also some sacrifices because you have no other life basically. And now I still do quite a lot of hours. I would say that since I'm in Dallara, average per week is like 50-55 hours per week. But 50-55, honestly, you still have the weekend free. If you start early, you are not so late at home also, so we can do other things. So to me, it's fine. Everything is relative. I mean, so it's not a big deal. I think when I did 24 hours of spa, in the week, you do like 92 hours, it was, I believe. Because already you have 24 in the weekend, and then you have all of the night practice the Thursday before and so on. So if you do motorsport, for sure, you will have a big rush and then much less, but yeah, it's manageable, I would say.
Hey. Well, thank you. Actually, you've mentioned a little bit about your school experience, but how was like your educational experience compared to, how to put this? A lot of people who want to work in motorsports, I think, as we've mentioned before, are desperate to come into it through F1. And a lot of them are obviously studying in the UK for that reason. You've obviously been around Europe a bit now. What kind of experience did you have? Were you ever aiming for F1, or was it just you were a fan of motorsports, you were happy to do what you felt was right for you, and how did you end up in the job you have now?
Me, since I'm 3 years old, I want to drive. So the point was to find a job where I was able to drive. I didn't think it was going to be the case with Dallara because the car is really super nice. But otherwise, with my CV of the dual skill, it's not so difficult to find a job where I will drive as an engineer on sports car, for example, like a Porsche or Ferrari or this kind of stuff. So it was the main goal. And I've never been interested by F1 for a super simple reason, is that to me, if you start young in F1, you will have super not interesting job, at least in my opinion. Because me, what I like is to have the full picture of the car. And yeah, not to do some super just using tool, developing tool or software, which is quite the case if you don't have a strong experience before. To me, F1 is absolutely fascinating. If you have a job, which is at least the one that you have now, it's quite difficult to start with. So no, I wanted to drive, and yeah, I just managed to find the opportunities where I could drive, because for sure F1 I couldn't, and I don't have the level to drive an F1 car, so it's quite clear. So yeah, not more than that. F1 is really, yeah. I have some friends that are in F1 now, and I don't think it's they have so cool job compared to me. And I also help different friends to do the interview to go to McLaren or to apply for some graduates in F1. And we were super surprised because the technical questions were actually really low level. And speaking with older people that are in F1 with more time, they told us that basically they don't really care about the technical level. They want to take people which are humanly good, and then they teach them. But if it's the case, if you are taught by the company everything, then you depend on them for the evolution and so on. And me, for example, in Dallara, I got a nice place and I got nice tasks straight away, even though I was just after school, because I had much more experience than all of the others, because all of the others are Italians, and unfortunately, because of your school system, you have much less internships. So also, if you start in Dallara or high-level company just after school with not a lot of experiences, you will depend on the company. You will do some part design on Katia. You will do some tool development and so on. But in general, you don't have the complete overview of the car doing this kind of stuff straight away.
So obviously, you've just said that having that extra experience helped, and you have this strong driving background. But in terms of the internships or other experience that you picked up along the way, what would you say was more helpful, and what was kind of advertised as helpful but actually is a bit redundant?
To be honest, all. I wouldn't say that the high-level internship were more interesting than the low-level, for the reason I told you just before, that when you are in low-level categories, you can do much more things, and it was helping me to be better in the high category. So if I didn't do the small internship I mean small racing team in France of a low category level, I would have been much less good in the high level, so in Audi factory basically. And for example, in Audi, we were two in internship, and the other guy, his job was just to develop a run sheet. So it's just an Excel that you use when the car is on track to put you put all of the lap times. Depending on that, you have the evaluation of the tire mileage, the fuel, and so on, and that's it basically. And it's just a tool. And for example, in his case, he was not able to understand all of what I learned on the car, on the methodology to make run such a complex car, and so on, because he was just doing this kind of stuff. And I would have done the same if I didn't have the low category level experience. And because of the low level category experience, basically, I knew some data on some basic car. So I mean, downforce level, stiffness level, this kind of basic thing, the wheelbase, the track, and so on. And then just asking to have a magnitude of order and to have comparison in between cars, just asking to the engineers this kind of question. They understood that I had a bit of metrics to compare, that I knew a bit how to operate a car, and then they give you a bit more responsibility, then you work well, and then you have a bit more, and that's it. So to me, it was just like a pass, and they all had an interest, and there is no less good than other.
Okay. So we've had a look at your LinkedIn before this, and as obviously WC fans, the thing that we liked a lot was your internship. You mentioned it earlier in LMP1 with Toyota. Can we ask you how you got that? Was it through the university? And also the very, very special thing was, I think it was quite short, right? It was just 1 month, as you said, whereas usually maybe it's a bit longer.
So you will be disappointed. The answer is that the chief of Toyota Motorsport is called Theau Haslin, and he's the ex-chief of the F1 program of Michelin when my father was a driver. So that's it.
Okay.
Be honest, all of my internship were found like this, also in Dallara, because I think I'm probably, maybe we are 4 non-Italian in the complete Dallara. So it's not super open, which was a bit strange at the beginning. So I think that if I was coming like spontaneously, I would have not been taken, probably. So it's the point. So for sure, everything works with the network because it's a small field, but I don't want to discourage you because basically all of my friends that are also in motorsport, they had to find their first internship too. And what they all did, and it works, and I mean close friends, so they are not 20, is to go on track when there is an event which is free, where you can access the grandstand, the pit lane for free, and so on. Then you just discuss with the people, you have a CV on you, and if you have a good feeling with the person you are speaking with, you just say, okay, I can work for you for free if you want for 2 weeks or 1 month. If you are happy, you give me a bit of money, and I'm interested to do this. And at the end, most of the French racing team, even in super low category like 208 Cup, they are used to take 1 or 2 internship trainee per year because it's quite nice for simple things. So the company are used to it. And as in general, they know that the internship are all coming in the same period, which is the end of the scholar year, basically. If you do this process quite early on the year, they are a bit surprised because they never have any normally requests at this period, like September or October. And each time I was with them when they did that, and each time it was quite impressive. Huh? It was a yes straight away, super easy. So obviously, I'm not saying that it's always super easy, but to me, sending CV, normal CV, and so on, I don't really see the point. And it's a field, especially small racing team, where people are doing a crazy amount of hours. They work a lot, so they don't check the emails. When they have emails, they have plenty of it, so they never look at it. It never works. So in general, you call the team, you say, okay, I'm a young guy, I come to this race. Is it possible to come to your workshop, to speak with someone, maybe to have a visit? Most of the time it works. And that's it. You present yourself. You see, they see that you are motivated because already you took the car to come to the event. You have the smile because you see the car. So to me, it's the only way to do. And to me, it works. And yeah, and then something you can do in parallel of your studies, then it's a matter of time. But you build your like a micro company, and you can work as a freelance in parallel of the study. That's what we were doing with my friends, me too. And that's where you really build the experience, basically.
Your work is performance engineer, and you were driving, as you said before. When you decided to study, what attracted you to this field of engineering specifically? Or maybe later on when you decided to work as a performance engineer with Dallara. Why performance engineer?
Because basically, at the beginning, I didn't want to be an engineer. I just wanted to drive. And when I entered the engineering school, I started to be interested at the end at the physics and the main principle of physics, and to start to understand basically why when you press the brake, the car stops. It starts to be interesting. But at the end, I was interested only on the thing I was able to feel in the car. So I was interested, for example, to get the principle of why if I put more anti-roll bar to the front, I have this reaction. Why if I put more aero to the front, I have this reaction. Why if I change the compound of the tire, I have this reaction. So this, for me, it was fascinating because I was able to really understand the reason of why I was feeling in the car. So this was even helpful for me to drive, honestly, to understand how to set up a car as a driver, how to discuss with the engineer, to be able to speak with the engineers with the technical terms, because sometimes you hear some incredible description from the drivers, but you cannot do anything with it. Like the front and the rear are not connected. Okay, but I don't know how to play with anything. So it was super helpful for me as a driver. And then performance engineer, as we said, it's linked to the final performance of the car. It's vehicle dynamics, but it's really oriented on what appears on track. For example, I have a good understanding of the suspension parameters if we speak about this topic. But if I see visually suspension in front of me, I will be visually able to see what kind of parameters they use. But in terms of mechanical design, if I see how the screws are working and so on, I will never be able to tell you if it's good or shit. Because I'm not a mechanical designer and I have no knowledge of that. So I tell you I want this stiffness and I hope I will have this stiffness, but with not the part bending and so on. But so it just came from always the driver, let's say, passion and understanding what was in the car, what moved. So it's really vehicle dynamics. The point is that even though, for example, you are most interested in CFD to do aerodynamics, or I read your post on the control system guys from Williams F1, this kind of job. To me, whatever the job you will do or the specialty you want to go in motorsport or even in automotive, it's the same at the end. The law of the physics are the same. You have to be good in vehicle dynamics because it explains all of this. Your control engineer that was speaking about the ABS, I mean, even though he doesn't write the code, as he said, he's just putting in the software the main important thing he needs for the ABS to work properly. The important thing is vehicle dynamics. You need to understand the tire. You need to understand the load transfer, what happens when you brake, the effect of aero, for example. If you have an aero car, it's quite a huge implication. And you have to understand that. If you are a CFD guy, an aerodynamic guy, when you will work on the aero map, so the model of the aero behavior of the car, depending on ride height, yaw, roll, and so on. If you don't have any idea of the effect of aero balance change, for example, you will make, for example, a super nice aero map with F1 level of downforce. But if it's undrivable because the changes are completely crazy, it makes no sense. And it's quite common, honestly, to see that. That's why you have a performance engineer to speak with the aero guys, because sometimes you see, wow, we have a crazy downforce coefficient. Yeah, but it's undrivable. So whatever the field, to build this kind of knowledge on pure physical law, it's super important. And first is tire, because it's the only thing that is in contact with the ground. So you can have a fantastic aerodynamic, fantastic ABS control system. If the tire is shit, the car is shit. It's the only thing that makes the car drive. So already, if you don't understand how the tire works, it's complex. And to be honest, the tire is the most complex thing on the car. So it's not so easy. But you have plenty of nice books like the Millikan that you can find that are quite good to explain that. So you can find some literature everywhere, basically.
You have just made a couple of things that are super theoretical come together when you said if it has crazy jumps, it's not derivable. And I was like, oh, that finally makes sense. Okay, so now we have some fun questions for you. Some of them get difficult, but the first one is, so Dallara has many fingers in many pies. Which aspect is your favorite? I mean, you can say whatever you're working on, but you can also say anything else.
To me, what is crazy with Dallara is the amount of projects and field they are working for. And what is impressive is that it's really completely different as a high-level team like a team or company like Audi Factory was or Toyota LMP1 was. On some aspects, for example, multiculturality or gender equality and so on, it's a bit less advanced, to be honest. But I mean, the opportunity you can get very young to work on super interesting projects, and they really give you the chance. It's honestly quite impressive. The other thing, but this I don't know if it's just Italian culture or if it's specific to Dallara, because in Italy I just worked for Dallara. But at least in my department, the working environment is really honestly super good. You don't have not useful pressure, which was really super typical in Germany when I was there, to put pressure all the time, even though you don't need it. Yeah, super nice working environment, super nice projects. You can work on super different fields and cars. I mean, Dallara, they start also to work a bit on aerospace, on this kind of stuff. So yeah, on this, it's really quite an outstanding company. I mean, yeah, IndyCar, Super Formula, F1 with Haas, Dallara Stradale, which is typical automotive, the aerospace project, the simulator developments, because it's a lot of work full-time, basically. So there are people just on the simulator, which is quite a crazy machine also. Yeah, it's for this, it's quite awesome.
Okay. Do you want to, this is a difficult one. Do you want to badly describe your job in 5 words and then accurately describe it in 3?
Badly?
Badly describe it in 5 words and then accurately in 3.
The first one is difficult. Accurately in 3, make the car fast. That's at the end, that's the goal. It has to be fast and drivable. It's better if you don't crash it in turn 1. And badly in 5 words. But badly, you want me to say the opposite of what I do?
Yeah.
It's more of a if you want to describe your job to, I don't know, somebody who's being very invasive, and they keep saying, no, but what do you do? But what do you do? And you're like, I don't want to tell you. So you describe it badly, but in 5 words only.
It's the same. I make the car fast. It's just that's it, basically. Most of the case.
No, go on.
Yeah, that's it. The car has to be fast. It's a more important thing.
Great, that works for us.
All right. So last of the fun ones before Christian asks one last serious one. But fun question: if you could swap jobs with anybody in the company for a day or a week, who would you choose and why?
The guy that drives more than me, so the professional driver that come at Dallara.
It does say on my sheet it can't be the driver.
Oh, yeah, but that's part of my job. So if I drive 40% of my time, which is not the case, today it's less, but I just want to drive more. I don't want to be the CEO. I don't care. I want to drive the car. Any car, I drive everything. That's the goal.
Okay, so yeah, thank you for sitting down with us. And one last question. Your job is really, really cool, all the various aspects of it, but where do you want to go maybe after this? Do you have any plans for the future? Like one big dream or something on the bucket list you absolutely want to do?
It will sound redundant, but my only passion on this is to drive. So what I want is to drive interesting cars. So to me, it has to remain a sport, because today you can be test driver in automotive to develop ABS for golf. And it's nice because you are outside, you are not all the time in an office, and you drive some cars. You can drive, for example, in Finland on the snow to validate the system. So it's already quite cool. But me, the passion comes from driving. I was used very early to drive racing cars, Porsche Cup, single seaters, and so on. So to me, it has really to be a sport and to be fun this way. So I don't have targets on country, on salary, on all of this is not really what matters. But if I can get paid to drive the fastest car I can, or the most fun car I can, the goal is this one. At the beginning, I just wanted to be test driver for sports car because it seemed more easy. With Dallara, I have the chance to start to drive also racing car, part of my job. So already, I can't wish for much more, to be honest.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's lovely to hear that you've made it to effectively a dream job fairly early on. But yeah, no, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't really know what else to say other than can we come visit at some point?
I mean, keep your dream. I mean, as I said, when I started, I was thinking like, if in 10 years I can get paid to drive Porsche or Ferrari, I will be happy. And after 2, I'm driving much better than this. So what I mean is that, yeah, keep your dream, even though your dream is performance or race engineer in F1 or whatever, I don't know, but keep it. And I mean, it's not because today you have low experience or you are just in school and a bit frustrated, as you said, because of that. It can happen and much faster than what you think. So just keep it all the time, keeping the dreams. Yeah, believing that it's possible and it will happen. I'm not so sure. Except if your dream is to drive the Formula One. Maybe it's more difficult. But except this one, honestly, to me, all of the other, I don't see the problem.
Okay, so yeah, thank you once again. It's been really, really cool. Thanks for your time. And yeah, maybe we'll meet someday at the factory or trackside somewhere. So yeah.